The question that so many people are asking is, why is Russia invading Ukraine in the first place? Well, the history behind this traces back to the dissolution of the Soviet Union and Russia's path to reclaim a place on the global scale, as well as Ukraine's fight to protect its sovereignty. Hey guys, welcome back to FTD Facts. My name is Leroy Kenton, and for this episode, I'm going to be sharing some facts and information on what is behind Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Okay, so let's start off with this episode at number 10. Russian Empire conquered Ukraine. For a century, the Russian Empire and the Habsburg Empire were in control of all of the territory that makes up present-day Ukraine. And then, many years later, Ukraine became a cornerstone of the Soviet Union, which by the end of the Union consisted of 15 Soviet socialist republics. Now, the fact of number 9 has to do with the end of the Soviet Union. Well, when it comes to the formation back in the year 1922, Ukraine and Russia were two of the founding members of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, also known as the USSR, or commonly just referred to as the Soviet Union. Now, ironically, Russia and Ukraine were also the signatories of the treaty that terminated the Union in December of 1991, and that was when Ukraine voted for independence in a democratic referendum. The end of the Union also ended the ban on the Ukrainian language. So this seemed like it was a step forward for Ukraine, but not necessarily. Either way, let's move on to fact number 8, the formation of NATO. Following World War II, the United States, as well as Western European forces, they formed what is known as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO for short, which is an intergovernmental military alliance that was first created to block the Soviet Union's growing influence. Now, let's look at Article 5. NATO members, they agreed to Article 5 of the treaty. And this article states that an attack on any NATO member is considered an attack on all members. Yeah. So this, of course, was more than enough to deter the Soviet Union from ever invading countries who had joined NATO. Number 6 takes us to the expansion of NATO. Starting in the year 1999, about 8 years after the fall of the Soviet Union, NATO began to expand. And by the year 2004, NATO added the former Soviet Baltic republics of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And then 4 years later, NATO declared that it had the intention to offer membership to Ukraine someday in the distant future. And that, of course, crossed a red line for Russia. And by the year 2020, NATO had added an additional 14 members, and many of those were once Soviet-controlled countries. Halfway in at number 5, Russia sees NATO as a big threat. Vladimir Putin, who is the president of Russia, he's voiced his opinion loud and clear many times that he sees that NATO's expansion is an existential threat. And the idea of having Ukraine join NATO, well, that, in his words, is a hostile act. He was even reported saying that Ukraine's aspiration to join the military alliance was a dreadful threat to Russia. This brings us to number 4. Russia sees Ukraine as part of Russia. In the past, Vladimir Putin has emphasized his view that Ukraine is a part of Russia, culturally, linguistically, as well as politically. Now, there are some people, mostly Russian-speaking people in Ukraine's east, they feel the same as the president, but more Ukrainian-speaking population in the west, they have generally been more in favor of individuality and greater integration with the rest of Europe. So on that issue, Ukraine being part of Russia, you're going to get a whole lot of different mixed answers depending on who you ask. That brings us now to number 3, the annexation of Crimea. Relations were further made a lot more complicated between Russia and Ukraine after Russia annexed Crimea. And Crimea is a strategic military and shipping base of the Black Sea, and this happened back in the year 2014. It was a major event. It was all over the news. Either way, in February and March of 2014, Russia invaded and subsequently annexed the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine, and this took place in the aftermath of what is known as the Revolution of Dignity. The Crimean Peninsula has been historically tied to Russia, but it had been integrated into Ukraine and was a major economic asset to them after the fall of the Soviet Union. The next fact, NATO reiterates their intentions. And by the way, NATO does not recognize Russia's sovereignty over Crimea. But moving on though, at a 2021 NATO conference, the member nations reiterated that they had intentions to acquire Ukraine. And this triggered the most recent Russian military aggression that has accumulated in this invasion in 2022. Now we end this episode off with number 1, what Russia wants with Ukraine. Well, the biggest reason for the invasion is for Russia to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO. NATO's land border with Russia would significantly increase if Ukraine had joined them. Also, Russia established a naval base in Crimea after annexation, and if Ukraine were to join NATO, well, this would give Ukraine significantly more resources to potentially take back the peninsula. Okay, there you have it, guys. This was just a look at 10 facts behind this Russian invasion of Ukraine. Definitely want to hear your thoughts and comments down below. If you enjoyed this video and you found it useful, informative, make sure to give that like button some love and subscribe if this is your first time here to FTD Facts. We explore facts and information about the various different countries, cultures, religions, and people of our world. So if those topics interest you, join the FTD Facts family, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.